Hello students! Welcome to this special video lesson designed by Rishi Sir. Today, we're diving into a really interesting story from your Footprints Without Feet textbook. It's Chapter 4, A Question of Trust by Victor Canning. And believe me, it's a story that really makes you think.
Oh, for sure. That's the first question that popped into my head. You know, we like to put people in neat little boxes, right? Thieves are bad, good people are honest. But this story, it just blurs all those lines. The main character isn't some typical villain, and that's what makes it so fascinating. So, can a good person be a thief? Let's find out together.
All right, so let's meet our main man, Horace Danby. Now, on the surface, he's the kind of guy you'd trust completely. He's about 50 years old, he's a locksmith, a respectable profession. But just below that ordinary surface, he's hiding a massive secret.
So, Horace is basically living this complete double life. During the day, he's a successful locksmith. Everyone in town thinks he's a good, honest citizen. But once a year, that whole personality disappears. He becomes this super careful, meticulous thief who targets just one safe. Imagine the pressure, no? On one hand, you're this respectable guy everyone looks up to, and on the other hand, you have this secret that could just bring your whole world crashing down. How to manage that tension, Yar?
So you've got to ask, why does he do it? Well, here's the twist. He's not stealing for money to live some fancy lifestyle. He robs just one safe a year for just enough money to fund his real passion, collecting rare and expensive books. So his crime isn't really driven by greed, it's driven by a love for literature.
And that brings us to the big event of the story, the robbery at a house called Shotover Grange. Now, Horace, being the careful planner that he doesn't just wing it. He is absolutely convinced that he has planned the perfect robbery. But, as we're about to find out, even the most perfect plans have a flaw somewhere.
I mean, just look at the level of preparation here. For 2 entire weeks, he studied everything about the house, the layout, the electric wiring, the garden paths. He knew exactly when the family would be in London and when the 2 servants would be out watching a movie. He even knew the dog's name, Sherry, so he could keep it calm. Wow, you have to admit his professionalism is pretty impressive. He is so thorough. But with all that careful planning, he forgot one tiny personal detail, his own weakness, his hay fever.
That's it. Exactly. A simple bowl of flowers sitting on a table. The smell, it triggers his hay fever, and right when he's about to get to work, he lets out this huge sneeze. It's such a small, totally human thing, right? But it's the one thing he didn't plan for, and it's what starts to unravel his whole perfect plan.
And of course, that sneeze is heard. Just when Horace thinks he's all alone, that he has everything under control, he hears a voice. Suddenly, his perfect robbery is interrupted. He is definitely not alone anymore.
So it makes you wonder, what is the biggest weakness of any perfect plan? It's always the one thing you can never really plan for, another person. And in this case, it's a very unexpected and a very clever person.
So he turns around, and there she is, a young, pretty woman dressed in red. And she's surprisingly calm. Her voice is described as kindly, but also firm. She's not screaming or panicking. She acts like she owns the place. And you know, it's her confidence that just completely throws Horace off his game. He's a careful planner. He's used to being in control. But he's just not prepared for someone who is this cool and commanding in the middle of a robbery. She comes up with this absolutely brilliant story right on the spot. She says she's the owner's wife, just got home, and she needs her jewels for a party. But, oops, she's forgotten the combination to the safe. She uses his fear of going to prison against him, and then she totally flips the whole situation. She asks him, the burglar, to break open the safe. For her. See, that's the point, Yar. That is some next-level manipulation. She completely played him. He's sitting there thinking he's talking his way out of trouble, but she's actually tightening the net around him.
And Horace, he's so relieved that she's not calling the police, and honestly so charmed by her confidence that he falls for the trap completely. He believes her story, he agrees to help thinking, okay, this is my ticket out of here. And in his desperation to please her and just get away, he makes one single fatal mistake.
He took off his gloves. Oh no, that's like rule number 1 for a thief, isn't it? How could he make such a basic mistake?
Exactly. And he does it for such a small reason, to offer her a cigarette lighter like a gentleman. But with his gloves off, he then goes and opens the safe for her. And the consequence?
It's disastrous. He leaves his fingerprints all over the safe, all over the room, leaving behind undeniable proof that he was there.
Okay, so he opens the safe, gives her the jewels, and just walks away? What happens next? Does he actually get away with it? I have a feeling there's a big twist coming up.
Well, he thinks he's in the clear. But just 2 days later, a policeman shows up and arrests him for the jewel robbery at Shotover Grange. His fingerprints are everywhere. And when he tries to tell his story about the owner's wife, the police just tell him that the real lady of the house is a gray-haired 60-year-old woman. Wow. So a thief was robbed by another, much cleverer thief. The lady in red was also a burglar, and she just used him to do all the hard work for her.
So let's break down the key takeaways, the big themes here. First, and most obviously, appearance versus reality. Nothing is what it seems. Horace looks respectable, but he's a thief. The lady looks like an innocent homeowner, but she's an even more cunning thief. And the second one is this idea of honor among thieves. The story basically proves this idea is completely false. Horace gets so angry in prison whenever anyone mentions it, because he trusted another person from his profession, and she totally betrayed him. Right? And finally, it's all about human weakness. For all his amazing meticulous planning, Horace's own flaws, his hay fever, his weakness for a charming personality, and his ultimate gullibility, that's what brought him down in the end.
You know, the story uses a literary device really cleverly. I think it's irony. Can you break that down for us in a really simple way?
Of course. Simply put, irony is when the result of a situation is the complete opposite of what you'd expect, and there's usually a deeper meaning to it. You know, like a fireman's house burning down, or a traffic cop getting a parking ticket. And this story is absolutely full of irony.
Okay, let's look at the different layers of irony in what happens to Horace. First, he's a locksmith, an expert at making and breaking locks, yet he ends up locked away in prison. Second, this super careful thief gets caught, not because of a flaw in his plan, but because he trusted someone in his own line of work. And maybe the biggest irony of all, he becomes an assistant librarian in prison. He is finally surrounded by all the rare books he ever wanted, but he has no freedom to enjoy them. The very thing he stole for becomes a symbol of his punishment.
And all of this leaves us with one final big question that really gets to the heart of the story's moral dilemma. Do good intentions ever justify bad actions? Horace stole because he loved books, not because of greed. Does that make what he did any less wrong? Something to think about. Ciao, done and dusted. Best of luck, guys.